Hello everyone and welcome to this video. This is going to be my detailed thoughts and opinions about Resident Evil 3 Remake. As you may have known, that I have, as of the time of recording this, finished Resident Evil 3 Remake yesterday on the 8th of April. And I did give my rundown, my thoughts about my game as like a fresh experience after I've, during the credit sequence. But as I was made aware by another streamer that I was watching not too long ago actually, about all the things that I completely forgot about and forgot to comment on, I thought, you know what, I have had time to digest everything that I've experienced with Resident Evil 3 Remake, had to process my thoughts, do comparisons to other things and stuff. And I thought that it needed a separate video to express my thoughts and stuff. Now, just to point out before I start, I am a huge Resident Evil fan. Like, Resident Evil is by far my most favourite franchise in gaming, with Resident Evil 2 Classic being my all-time number one favourite game. Anyway, I'm going to start on what the game did right and what I liked about the game first of all. So, the visuals, the graphics in the game, how everything looks, top notch. I think the game itself, it kept with the original Resident Evil 2 Remake and it improved upon it. I think the level design as well, with the city and like later areas in the game, beautiful looking. Really did enjoy how the game looked. During the first section of the game, I felt like I was in Raccoon City. I felt like I was actually playing Resident Evil 3, but modernized. Really did like that. The sound as well, top notch. I love the sound. I commented this in my video, in my playthrough, that the sound of the guns really did sound nice. They sounded impactful and really satisfying to listen to, basically. Nemesis as well. I was a bit worried at first before I started playing the game how Nemesis would sound, but I was not disappointed when I finally heard him. Definitely think that's a good Nemesis voice, and how you can hear him move about is also very good. The redesigns of the characters and enemies, for the most part, I really did enjoy that. I thought that Jill's redesign is perfect. As soon as I first saw Jill, in the cover art for the game, I immediately was like, that's Jill. That looks, I was picturing it side by side, classic OG Jill from RE3 OG to that one, and I was like, that's just a modernized version of Jill. That is Jill. I can see that being Jill Valentine. Compare that to, say, Leon and Claire from Remake 2. For them, I felt like they somewhat look like original Leon and Claire, but there's a lot of differences. But with Jill in Resident Evil 3 Remake, they did a fantastic job, I think. Carlos, I like how Carlos looks. Just get rid of the hair. Replace the, like, this is 1998, right? You're not a member of the Bee Gees. You're not Bob Ross. You're not Rambo. Get rid of the hair. I'm pretty sure that wouldn't be regulation anyway to have hair that long. That would block his line of sight most likely, and he'd probably be told to shorten his hair. I mean, come on. The old style of haircut for Carlos is way better, but apart from his hairstyle, I think Carlos was done really well. Nemesis as well. As pretty much majority of the OG Resident Evil community would probably agree with me, we weren't a fan of his nose, because his nose just looks way too out of place. Like, his entire face is all messed up, but his nose looks like it's been perfectly crafted, just slightly bent. It's like his nose is the only perfectly smooth and crafted thing on his body. It's just bent. It just looks out of place. Now, apart from that, I think Nemesis looks fantastic. And when you're running away from him in the game, he is menacing, he is terrifying. Anyway, that's my thoughts on the characters' redesigns. Nikolai, I like Nikolai's redesign. A little bit getting used to, but I like his redesign. And Mikhail, again, really good redesign, I really like him as well. I think that's pretty much everything. Dario doesn't look anything like Dario Rosso, but then again he's a side character, so it doesn't really matter much. I could comment on Kendo, but he's from Resident Evil Remake 2 and there's literally no difference there, and I think he looks fantastic. As I mentioned earlier, the level design was fantastic, I really enjoyed that. The first few Nemesis encounters is another thing that I really did like about the remake. Although, to begin with, as I commented in my playthrough, I felt like Nemesis was thrown in your face a little bit too quickly. Again, I think that's a nitpick. That's more of a nitpick than a serious complaint. A serious complaint. The first few sections, though, when you encounter Nemesis, like actually in game, when you burst through that wall as you exit the power substation. Or yeah, like the power station, with those weird bug things. That's when you first encounter Nemesis for the first time in game, and you're actually playing. I really liked that. I remember as I got back to the safety, the first save room after running away from Nemesis. I remember getting back to that room and I felt terrified. I felt like there's no escape, and I said this in my video that. With Mr. X in Remake 2, you could manipulate his movement. You could hear Mr. X from a mile away and you could easily avoid him. With Nemesis, because Mr. X, he doesn't know where you are until you make it obvious to him. But with Nemesis, he knows where you are at all times. He's always looking at you, he's always watching you. You just can't see him, but he can see you, and he knows where you are. He's manipulating you, you're not manipulating him. It's like a complete reverse with Mr. X, And that is what made him feel, that's what made it feel terrifying, because I had no control, I had nothing against Nemesis. There was no way I could control how Nemesis behaved, because he knew exactly where I was, and where I was going. And that's what makes him terrifying. That is what makes Nemesis terrifying in the original game and in the remake for the first half of the game. He's calculating, he's intelligent. He knows where you are, he's hunting you down. And there's nothing you can do about it. You could walk down one alleyway and he might not be there. The next time you go down that alleyway, he's there. You never know. So you never know when Nemesis is going to pop up, and you never know how you're going to deal with the situation exactly. That's what made Nemesis terrifying in the original and in the first half of this game. And I really, really did like that. Even, later on when he got the flamethrower and the rocket launcher still, I really, really felt like he was a force to be reckoned with. And he was terrifying. Really good Nemesis design for those parts. The story for the first half of the game as well, I liked it. I mean, you can tell from the first half of the game, the story was Resident Evil 3. It stuck pretty much to the original for the most part, with necessary, changes and adjustments as you'd expect in a remake. There was, changes and adjustments in Resident Evil 2 Remake that, made it make more sense. Because let's admit it, the original Resident Evil 2 and 3, they have a lot of plot holes, they have a lot of story mishaps that don't really make much sense, so it makes sense for them to address those and sort of merge the new storytelling in with the old storytelling in a way that makes it feel like a smooth transition, and that it belongs in the game. And I really enjoyed that about Resident Evil 3 Remake. Now, as I said before, the characters I really did enjoy, Jill's personality and her character. Not talking about design, but her actual personality and character. I liked it. I like Jill Valentine in Resident Evil 3 Remake. I think she's been done perfectly in character and personality. She's independent, she's brave, but she's also terrified at the same time. She's a professional. She's been through this before, she somehow, she's not somehow, but she somewhat knows what she's doing and how to deal with it. She's the Jill that pretty much I expected to encounter. I liked it. Carlos, way better than original. Carlos's character and personality in the remake is just leagues better than the original. In the original, Carlos was arrogant, he was cocky, he was an egomaniac, he was a narcissist. I hated Carlos in the remake. I hated Carlos so much that I will put him second most hated character in the Resident Evil history for me. Just shy of Steve from Code Veronica X. That's how much I hated Carlos in original. But in the remake, I really like Carlos. I thought he's not a narcissist. He's not too much of a narcissist as he was in the original. He didn't think he was the be-all and end-all, best guy in the world, God's gift to women sort of guy, like he was in the original. In the remake, he was cocky and, arrogant, but in a way that came off as like, I'm joking sort of way. Like he's doing it to get like a laugh out of you or something like that. And I liked that about Carlos in the remake. I really did like Carlos in the remake a lot more than his original counterpart. Same with Nikolai. Nikolai, as in the original, you hate him. He's meant to be hated. Nikolai was done very well. I really do like how Nikolai was done. Every single time I saw Nikolai, I just wanted to punch him in the face. He has a very punchable face. Mikhail, even though Mikhail didn't get too much spotlight, it's pretty much just like in the original, really. Not much spotlight for him, but he's a lot more mobile in the remake than in the original. In the original, he's basically incapacitated on the train, pretty much, delirious. But I did like Mikhail's character. He's really likable. It's like he's actually there to help. He's genuine. He's taking his job seriously. He's actually trying to help. He's a genuine person. That's what I felt like, and I really did like Mikhail. I think that's pretty much it. Tyrell, I can't really comment much about Tyrell, to be honest. He wasn't in the original as far as I can remember, but from what I, briefly know about him in the remake, I liked Tyrell. I thought he was a cool guy, but just not enough time to get to know him, really. But that's pretty much that. And that's pretty much... the music I can probably add as an additional pro. The music, I think, was very nice. It was creepy, atmospheric, but also suited the action parts when it needed. Also, I love the remastered old tracks, because there was a couple, maybe 2 or 3, possibly more, old OG Resident Evil tracks that were remastered in the remake, which I really did enjoy, such as the Save Room theme, the final Nemesis fight theme was also remastered, there was an end credits theme that was also remastered from the OG credits. I really did like that, and I like the new additional music as well for the most part. Now, moving on to the cons, what didn't I like about Resident Evil 3 Remake? First of all, it's a pretty big one. Nemesis is, okay, I guess that's correct, later designs. Like I said, in my pro section, I like Nemesis design in the first half of the game, but once you reach the second half, which I consider to be post-derailment of the train, I think Nemesis just looks stupid. He looks like something out of Bloodborne, and he's no longer terrifying. As soon as you see his second mutation, he's not scary, in my opinion. After that, I never felt hunted. As soon as I saw Nemesis' second design, I was like, oh, right, okay, he's a dog now. Right, gotcha. He's basically, I just got incredible Bloodborne vibes from him, and Nemesis just, from that point onwards, it just stopped being scary. because he's no longer Nemesis was no longer presented as calculating, smart, intelligent, a stalker character. He could pop out of anywhere. He no longer presented himself like that. Instead, he just presented himself as like a mindless beast. Just a mindless beast, really. That was kind of stupid, really. If you watch him play through, you can see he was kind of stupid. And that's why I think that they should have kept Nemesis as like a humanoid figure for the most part of the game until the very end, like they did in the original. In the original, Nemesis had a slow mutation. He started out like he does in the remake, in his gear, clothed up, hunting you down. And then, about the halfway point in that game, most of his sort of like wrapping or his cloak is basically blown off, burnt off, or whatever. And there's like a lot of tentacles coming out of him, as you'd expect. It's bloody Nemesis, for God's sake. And he looks more mutated, more like he's changing into something else. But he's still Nemesis. You can still recognize him as Nemesis, and he's still calculating, he's still hunting you down, he still knows where you are. And then in the original, at the final fight, Nemesis basically mutates into a creature beyond recognition. It doesn't look like Nemesis anymore, but it's the final fight, and given what you do to Nemesis before that in the original, it makes sense. Now, in the remake, Nemesis was scary for the first half of the game, but as soon as he turned into a dog, he was no longer scary for me. And I feel like a lot of people share that same opinion. It just doesn't make any sense how he went from being on fire, even though he's been on fire before, when he was burning that entire building up, and before that, he dives into water and then he comes out as a giant blood-borne dog. That doesn't make any sense. I felt that was just way too extreme of a mutation that quickly. They should have kept that mutation later on for like one of the final stages of the game. Not that early on. I think that was a big mistake by Capcom. Big mistake. And then you got like Nemesis' final design, his final mutation, basically his third form, which is basically just a blob. Everyone basically shares the same opinion. He's just a blob at that point. He's no different from Birkin, G5. He's just a blob. Just a mass of bone and flesh. There's nothing there anymore. That's not Nemesis at that point. At that point, I was just like, okay, I'll give up. Nemesis they've gone down this route, fine, whatever. This could have been a good game. Or it could have been a great game. But they messed Nemesis up at the end. In a really bad way. And the thing that really annoyed me about his later mutation, especially the very final mutation, is everything about Nemesis was different. His entire structure, his entire body was completely mutated beyond recognition. The only thing that was recognizable was his teeny weeny little face. Why was that the only thing in his design left completely untouched? It just looked so out of place and so just wrong and stupid. Right, missing content. Now this was something that I forgot to add in my end of playthrough thoughts during the credits. Missing content in the game. I completely forgot about it because I always expected it to come at a later time. And the missing content being, for example, gathering the materials, the components to get the train working. Doing that, going through the park, to the petrol station, to the what's it called? Oh god, the power substation for the fuse. And the parking garage for the battery, and obviously the petrol station for the fuel, the oil. All of that in a casual playthrough in the original could probably amount from anywhere from an hour to maybe an hour and a half of gameplay, and they cut that out. I don't know why. They also cut out the Gravedigger fights. There's no Gravedigger in the game, and I expected there to be Gravedigger. Where's Gravedigger at? You also got the clock tower, which is completely gone. Yes, the second, official boss fight for Nemesis, that does take place near the clock tower. You can see the clock tower in the background, he climbs up it, like King Kong for some reason. But you never get to explore it. And I think that was a really, sort of like a big mistake in my opinion. I mean, the whole clock tower section, with its puzzle and the bonus Nemesis boss fight in there from the original, that's like an additional hour and a half of content right there. So we got up to 2 hours of gameplay completely cut out from the game. The Dead Factory was removed from the game as well. The Dead Factory was replaced with the labs. Now, there being a whole Nest 2, I wasn't too keen on that personally. I think it would have been better if they just kept it as like the Dead Factory from the original game, but I don't know. But overall, like, you've got 2 hours roughly of content that they cut out of the game, and bear in mind that Resident Evil 3 Remake is about a 5 to 6 hour game casually. I mean, if you are a fast player and you are not too bothered about missing every item and you don't fight Nemesis to collect all of his dropped items, you could easily complete the game in 4 hours casually. Easy. And bear in mind, right, that the original Resident Evil 3 was a rushed game. Like, they did the first half of the game and that's what they expected to do. Get up to the clock tower, and that was what they expected the game to be. Just that. And they didn't expect it to be an official Resident Evil game. It's going to be a bonus Resident Evil game, like a side game. But, due to circumstances, a change in circumstances, they had to make it into an official game. Like an official Resident Evil 3 game. And so the second half of the game, which included I think the hospital, the Dead Factory, the final fight, all of that was all rushed into the game. And original Resident Evil 3, I think, is roughly around about an 8 to 9 hour casual experience. So Resident Evil 3 Remake is like 3-4 hours shorter than the original, which is kind of sad in a way if you think about it. And it could have easily have made it 8 hours long if they just added in the cut content from the original. Obviously add it in, change it up a bit, and for the remaster, just like they did with Resident Evil 2 Remake. They added in old stuff, but they changed it in a way that fit with the modern view. They could have done that with Resident Evil 3 Remake, and I don't know why they didn't. The second half of the game, I felt a drop in quality. Right now, first of all, let me preface this by saying that I consider the second half of the game when you resume playing as Jill after the train derails. Now, I think the first half of the game, up to that point, after Carlos's RPD section, I felt that was Resident Evil 3 Remake. That's what I expected. I felt like I was playing Resident Evil 3 Remake, and I liked what I was playing and what I was seeing. After that bit, I felt a drop in quality. Like, as soon as I was starting to, basically Call of Duty my way through the RPD with 10 zombies on the second floor near the shower section with Carlos, at that point, that's when I felt a shift, a change in quality from the game. But it wasn't too noticeable. As soon as I saw Nemesis in his second form, that is when I had that gut feeling. That's when that's when you get that feeling when your stomach drops, That's when I was like, oh no, what are they doing? Please tell me they are not messing this game up. That's when I had that feeling. I didn't say it and I didn't show it too much, but that's when I had that feeling. From that point onwards. That's when I felt the game shifted from Resident Evil 3 into something else. Sort of like a halfway point between Resident Evil 3 and Resident Evil 6. It was sort of like halfway between the two. And the reason why I feel that, I know that Resident Evil Resistance was outsourced by a different company, but I think that they spent half of their time working on Resident Evil 3, the first half of the game, and then the remaining half of their time working on Resistance. I think that's why we got a subpar product in the end. I think what they should have done is they should have focused all of their attention on Resident Evil 3 Remake and later worked on Resistance, releasing it as a free game for all those who own Resident Evil 3 Remake. That way, they could have dedicated the time required to Resident Evil 3 Remake and the time required for Resistance, not half-arsing it. Which is what I think that they did with the remainder of the game. Moving on to my other point, boss fights. Now, the first couple of boss fights, which are probably like the Nemesis flamethrower encounter and his brief like mini kind of boss fight when he has the rocket launcher, those I felt were good, but I'm talking about the ones after that, when Nemesis is basically a dog. During that first encounter, I felt like I was confused. I was like, what's going on? Why? I think I was in denial or disbelief of what I was seeing at that point in the game. I was like, this isn't Nemesis. Why am I fighting this fight? Why am I here? Why am I doing this? So the first fight was confusing. When the first dog Nemesis fight was confusing for me. The second one, when you're in that acid pit and you have Carlos basically cheerleading you in the background with zombies dropping in out of nowhere for no reason. That point, and I'm pretty sure I expressed this in my playthrough, that point I felt like it was a comedy. At that point I felt like I was playing like a parody of Resident Evil 3. It was so stupid, it was a rinse and repeat of a previous boss fight, but just made more ridiculous. Nemesis was just running around in circles half of the fight, with Carlos going, "Yeah, Jill, you got him, Jill, go Jill." It's like, what is this? Like, it didn't feel like I was playing Resident Evil 3 at that point. That was not Resident Evil 3. That wasn't even Resident Evil. That was like an indie developed game that's done shit. I felt that boss fight was hugely disappointing. And I was just like, what have they done? This is stupid. This is pathetic. This isn't Resident Evil. This is not Resident Evil at all. I don't know why they did that. It's such a cringy fight. It was such a stupid fight. It made no sense. I just hated it all the way through that fight. It was so bad. Definitely one of the worst Resident Evil fights I've seen in a while. The zombies made no sense. You know, yeah, I get it that they used to dump bodies in there and melt them away, but who's dumping the bodies now? Everyone's dead. Who's dumping the bodies into the arena? Secondly, he can easily be stunned with a grenade launcher. Easily stunned. It was... like, honestly, at one point, I think I was in my playthrough, I was standing there, just aiming with the grenade launcher. I think I was just sitting back and relaxing, playing with one hand, just, you know, one hand on my chin, just resting my head, whilst the other hand was just playing with the mouse. And I was just like, this is easy. This is apparently a boss fight. When actually I felt like I was watching a circus act. The final fight of the game wasn't too bad. I mean, it was somewhat... it felt familiar to the original final fight, pushing in the batteries and charging up the rail cannon. It felt familiar, and I liked that aspect of it. But, you know, as I said before, I didn't like Nemesis' final redesign. I felt like it was just an amalgamation of nothing. It just wasn't Nemesis. Jill basically developing superhuman strength to lift a weapon that looks like it would need to be lifted by two very strong people, at least, to operate. I don't know how she had superhuman strength at that point. I mean, sorry, not even adrenaline would do that. I didn't really like that bit, and I felt it was a bit... It was not good, but it wasn't as bad as the previous fight, in my opinion. Um, I also felt, and I touched on this earlier, that from the halfway point onwards, the game felt like it was returning to its Resident Evil 6 roots. Now, I understand and I accept the fact that Resident Evil 3 is a lot more action-packed than its previous games. It wasn't the original. But I feel like the remake took it to an extra level. There was a lot more action-packed sequences in the game than in the original RE3. In the RE3, it feels like you're playing a survival horror game. In Resident Evil 3 Remake, it feels like you're playing a survival horror mixed with Call of Duty or Battlefield. And I think I said that. I think I said that I had so much ammo at one point that I felt like I was playing Battlefield. And it did honestly feel like that. I was waiting for someone to throw down a med kit so I can heal. Another thing that I didn't like was the clunky dodge mechanics. And I said this several times throughout the game, the dodge mechanics don't work 80% of the time. 80% of the time through my playthrough, they just didn't work. And I felt like I was pushing the button. I felt like I was pressing the button at the right time. Yes, I did mess up a few times, but I felt like I was pressing it at the right time several times and it just wasn't working. Sometimes I pressed the button, I saw the animation playing out just before they hit me, and they still hit me. Sometimes I was pressing the button and she wasn't even dodging, she wasn't even going for it. So I felt like the dodge mechanic feels a lot very clunky, very... It feels like they were like, okay, let's implement the dodge mechanic because people want that, it's just to quickly do it. It felt like they implemented a very basic and unpolished version of the dodge, which they could have done a lot better. Even when Jill does dodge, she sort of like lunges forward as if she's drunk. I mean, if she was actually going for an actual dodge, I don't think you would lunge forward like you're hungover. So it didn't really make much sense. It felt like it was very... It didn't feel like it was implemented properly into the game for me. I feel like that could have been vastly improved. And the final point that I've got written down is the on-rail section, or sections, several. Throughout the game, there were several sections, mostly with Nemesis, that felt like you had no control over the game. Nemesis would chase you, and it would just basically turn into a cutscene. With like one of those cutscenes giving you very, very faint controls, you know, where you have to crawl away from Nemesis when he's got his tentacle around your leg. Most of Nemesis encounters, you know, from the second half onwards felt like they were in a cutscene, and the game was also just, it felt very linear and very scripted. And that's pretty much all I've got to say on the matter, really. That's my detailed thoughts and opinions on the game. The lack of content, you know, additional to the lack of content, there was no bonus modes. I mean, I know Resident Evil Resistance is the bonus mode apparently, but I feel like they could have added in the Mercenaries mode or something extra. I know there's extra difficulties, but that's not really extra content. It's just old content, new difficulty. But anyway, that's my thoughts on it. I feel like the game was just shy of perfection. Well, actually, it was pretty shy of perfection. Resident Evil, like in Capcom's track record, you know, Monster Hunter World, Resident Evil 2 Remake, Devil May Cry 5, all fantastic games. I would give all of them 10 out of 10s. Then Resident Evil 3 Remake comes along, and that is where I feel like they've stumbled. I would say, personally, I would give Resident Evil 3 Remake a 6 out of 10. It's barely above average. Mostly because of all of the faults. Like, they are severe enough to warrant a 6 out of 10 in my eyes. I would say that the game, it is a good game. It is a good game. It's an okay remaster, but it's far from perfect. The Resident Evil 3 Remake is nowhere near as good as Resident Evil 2 Remake. It is a far cry away from Resident Evil 3 Original. But I do feel like it is still a good game. It's just not a great game. Would I recommend it to like a friend? I mean, if you're a hardcore player, if you're a hardcore Resident Evil fan, then sure, you might enjoy it. You probably will enjoy it if you're a hardcore player like myself. I did enjoy the game for what it had to offer, but it's not a great game, as I said before. It was okay. I would recommend it to a hardcore player, a hardcore fan of the RE series, but I wouldn't recommend it to someone who may be on the edge, who maybe their money's tight, or you know, they're not a fan of the original RE2 remake. I'd say wait for sale, but that's my thoughts and opinions on the matter. Good game, far from perfect, nowhere near as good as the Remake 2 or the originals. Many flaws. They half-assed a lot of the game, or the second half of the game. It felt like a complete different game in the second half compared to the first. And that's pretty much it, guys. So, thank you very much for watching this sort of like a long run, like 40 minutes almost, of just my thoughts and opinions on Resident Evil 3 Remake. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Take care.